Hi, and welcome to My Words, Our Journey, the podcast, Season 10, Episode 1, When Ink Doesn't Run. I'm Monty, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening. Let's begin. Chapter 1, What's in a Name? Ink, we can do amazing things with it. Write a song that will evoke the strongest of emotions. Tell a tale that wins awards, accolades. Remember those we love the most with a dedication for all to see. Sign a document that can be of utmost importance. It can also ruin a work of art, either drawn or written. Tell the truth when one's voice can't. Sign on the dotted line, causing years of struggle and angst. Ink can take many paths. What path would you expect from a man who grew up with the name Ink? A name given at birth. Not something dreamed up intentionally or standing out for social media. Nope, the God-given name by his messed up parents. Matt and Susie Trimble, top contenders in the Worst Name of Your Son contest. They met in college, both open to what college campus had to offer. Left-wing instructors, experimental drugs, conspiracy theories, groups ready to fight every injustice of the last 200 years. Their dreams of owning multiple food trucks was replaced with the reality that their degrees in philosophy and art appreciation were not going to get them the money or the loans needed to move forward. So, Susie worked at a small coffee shop, and Matt, he used his talents to build a semi-successful tattooing career, hence the name Ink. His mom would tell the story of how excited Matt had been when he came home, bursting through the door and exclaiming he had come up with the perfect name. Unfortunately, Ink and his father had a different idea of what perfect meant. From a young age, he'd cringe when anyone would ask him his name. At times, he'd pretend he hadn't heard the question. School had been cruel. Ink wasn't an athlete, brain, or good-looking, so he was known for one thing. His name. Johnny Cash had sung of a boy named Sue. Would that boy switch names with Ink? He had wondered more than once. Chapter 2, Uncle Spence. Ink was 8 when his parents sat him down, told him they had volunteered to build a school in Indonesia. He was so excited. He hugged them both and ran to the room to pack. It was a minute later that they came and sat down on his floor. The explanation: there had only been 2 spots available when they signed up. The spin? Ink would be able to spend a few months with his Uncle Spence on his farm in Pennsylvania. As they sped away, after the briefest of goodbyes, Ink would never see his parents again. He had been told different stories over the years, everything from pirates to mudslides. The one he liked the best, and he held on to, was that they died in a fire shortly before the school was expected to open. They had risked their own lives to save others. That he could wrap his mind around. So far as he knew, Uncle Spence was his only living relative. The man never adopted him, but he was fed, had a decent roof over his head, and he was made sure that he had these things he needed for his education. Ink knew the man wasn't rich, but he made sure he had decent clothes to wear and the supplies to help him with his studies. To others, he appeared to be a man that was trying to do his best. To Ink, he was a man to fear. From the beginning, Ink was put in his place. He was expected to follow very simple house rules. Eat what was put on your plate without complaining. Do the chores listed on the fridge every morning. Never talk back. When the chores are done, study. Be ready to leave for church Wednesday night at 6:45. Sunday mornings, 8:45 for Sunday school. Any deviation from these rules was met with harsh punishment. Spence was the accuser, judge, and jury. The punishments would vary. Ink concluded it gave his uncle some kind of weird thrill to change up the awful things he would do. The nightmares would never go away. His uncle would never call him by his name. He learned to answer to boy, hey, come here, and several curse words. At church, he was introduced as my favorite nephew. Chapter 3, Something Broke. Ink had been chained outside with his uncle's favorite dog. It had been 3 or 4 days. He wasn't sure. He was sure it had rained on and off the entire time. When it wasn't raining, the sun was beating down. The chain in the doghouse he was attached to, just outside of reach of the only tree. So when it rained, he was in the leaky doghouse for shelter. When it was sunny, he was in the doghouse to avoid the sunburn he had gotten last time. It was probably his uncle's favorite punishment looking back. The old man would sit on his back porch, smoking, drinking, occasionally acknowledging that he existed. He would toss the dog scraps while Ink lay on the wooden floor wondering what he had done to deserve this life. He loved his parents. He really did. Why shouldn't he? There was no proof of what had happened to them. They really could have died heroes. He would fight anyone that would say anything otherwise. He had actually, more than once, winning a few, losing the majority. Watching the God-fearing, church-going man give his dog food off his plate while he received the bare minimum once a day caused something to break in him. He wasn't sure what, but he felt it in his mind and deep, deep in his soul. Why was he in such a bad place? Well, he had read the sports page. He had forgotten to put it back on the armrest of the caretaker's recliner. For that, he was in the doghouse. Literally, the doghouse. It was late, and his uncle had clearly been drinking for a while when he released him. No words, just a grunt. Ink, straight to his room. Packed the warm backpack that he had been given a few years earlier. I think he was at church camp. He only had a few belongings, but they were his, so he packed them up and made for the front door. Uncle Spence accused him of stealing. Ink emptied the backpack. When there was nothing but his own stuff inside, Spence got even madder. Ink had inadvertently hit the old man with his backpack as he swung it over his shoulder. He retaliated with an aggressive push in the young boy's back. Words were yelled, threats made on each side. Uncle Spence, swearing the boy would be back. Ink, making it clear he would never see his face again. Something had broke, and Ink realized if he had any chance of fixing it, he had to get away. Chapter 4, Sleeping in Trees. The shelves in Uncle Spence's home were filled with books, many religious, but others spoke of adventure. Ink had loved the idea of living in the South. Warmer winters, sometimes no snow. He had dreamt of amazing adventures of his own, all set in one of the southern states. His uncle was a big sports fan. Sometimes he'd let Ink sit behind him in the other room and watch college football from afar. He knew about Georgia, Clemson, Florida, Florida State, and of course, Alabama. He didn't care much what state he settled in, as long as it was in the South. Ink wasn't dumb, and he knew to avoid hitchhiking. His plan, the one he had thought of so many times over the last few years. Walk in the cool of the night, staying alongside the major roads and highways. When the sun would begin to come up, he would climb into the trees for shade and rest. Ink had saved every penny he had gotten, either from helping neighbors with chores or from nice folks at church. His uncle had never touched his money, and for that, Ink was thankful. He purchased some canned items and waters for the trip. He wasn't used to eating much. The sound of the traffic passing by was soothing to him, the hum of the tires on the road, I guess. He found it comforting. After a long night of walking, sleep came easy for him. He was free. Each morning he would read from one of the 2 books he had packed. One was the Bible he had been given at church. His name was engraved on the front lower left corner in gold letters. The other was a copy of a book called Deep South. He liked the way the author spoke of the South and its people. Ink wasn't sure of his age. He had lost track of even when his birthday was. If he had to guess, he'd say he was 16, maybe 18. He had no real plan, if you didn't count living off canned meats and snack cakes that could last in their plastic forever, calling the trees his home during the day and the pavement his journey at night. He believed in God. He didn't believe in humans. So when he prayed, which he did twice daily, he asked the Lord to lead his way. He never asked for safety, or for someone to take care of him, or for cars, homes, land, riches. Nope, just lead his way. He believed the Savior had a purpose for his life, and he wanted to be ready, open, willing when the time was right. That is what he prayed for. Sleeping in trees, he thought about those words. There could be a song or a story in there somewhere. Chapter 5, Adam's Landing. Ink has made his way to Highway 95 South. He had looked at maps. He knew he could stay on that road all the way to Florida if he wanted to. Walk, pray, sleep. Read, walk, sleep. Through Maryland, then Virginia. North Carolina almost pulled him in, but he still felt led to walk it some more. So they ended up in South Carolina. That was it. He found where he felt he was meant to be. It was perfect. There was a lake, Lake Marion. There was a national park, campgrounds. It was paradise. Ink moved about the lake and its surroundings for several weeks. He got supplies at one of the campgrounds, general stores. A nice lady and her daughter were running the place. They were pleasant, but they asked a lot of questions. He wouldn't be going back. The trees in South Carolina seemed bigger, greener, leafier, more comfortable to Ink. He had found his landing spot. His time was spent exploring what the lake and the surroundings had to offer. He was comfortable. His spirit, well, it was healing. During his third week, Ink was on the northeast corner of the lake, exploring, when he came upon a home. Well, more like a mansion. It was clearly empty, abandoned, weeds and grass to his hips. There was a stillness, but something led him closer. He could picture the beauty when it was young and filled with love, the fine meals, laughter. He could almost smell the food and hear the laughter. On the back of the home was a deck. It looked frail, worn, ready to give up, only a few boards holding the frame together. Again, he could envision the happiness that must have happened there on that porch, the stories told, the memories made. Off in the distance, he could see a cemetery. He wondered if the owners now resided just a football field or two away. He had not originally seen the structure. It wasn't until he entered the backyard from the other side that he found the treehouse. He had to build up his courage, but finally that little voice moved him forward. Once up, the old sturdy ladder he could see for miles in every direction. The craftsmanship showed someone who really loved the children that would play here. Adam's Landing was everything that he had dreamed of during his worst times in Pennsylvania. In his heart, he felt he was home. Get closer to God here. Find himself, maybe, he thought. He felt like he could be happy there, maybe the rest of his life. Chapter 6. Is God a woman? Ink had been somewhere between sleep and knowing it was time to get up, leaning more on the awake side. So, when he heard the voice, and he knew he heard a voice, he thought he had just been caught trespassing again. It would not have been the first time since leaving his uncle's. The voice was a whisper, distant, like on the other side of the treehouse wooden wall. If you stay, you must help. Again, this time a little louder. If you stay, you must help. Ink flew out the open door, down the ladder, then ran for a good minute as fast as he could. When he stopped, he looked around. Nothing. It had been the voice of a woman? Maybe a girl. He wasn't sure. What he was sure of, he had heard the voice. Twice. His legs moved double time back to his tree, about a mile or so from the treehouse. Once there, he ate half a granola bar and drank from his water thermos. The thermos had a couple of Star Wars figures on it. He had found it in the trash along the way. Maryland, maybe? He wasn't sure. But it was perfectly good. The artwork a little faded, but that didn't matter none. Still kept the water cool. The water bottle was only one of the things that he had gathered along the way. Currently, in his tree, Ink had a red sleeping bag. No holes, rips or tears, just a stain on one side, so he kept that side facing down to the ground. He picked up a couple of baseball hats, A jacket that was nice, just a couple sizes too big, but he liked it. His favorite, though, his shoe collection. He had found a few pair along the long walk. There were big bins in some parking lots that were filled with clothes, shoes, toys, some so much that they overflowed. If those items were meant for the needy, well, no one was more needy than Ink, he thought, as he touched one of the white high tops. He spent the day washing his stuff down at the lake, mending a pair of shorts, basketball shorts, so they were a little long, but they worked well with a pair of his sneakers. Ink also went to the furthest general store from his tree, just because he had the time and he needed the distraction. The only thing he bought while he was there? A pack of gum. That was a special treat. He deserved it. On the way back, he fought the thoughts no more. That voice. What help? There must be millions of other people that could help better than he could. Was it God? Could he have been thinking God was a man this whole time, and she was a woman? Back at his tree, he fought the urge to go back to the tree house. Part of him wished he had never seen it to begin with. The other part, the part that was winning at the moment, well, it was fearful that he was ignoring his opportunity for adventure, to please God. He didn't know. He just knew he had heard the voice. He put up a good fight for the next 2 nights. Chapter 7. No comment. The rain started not long after Ink moved into the treehouse. It was just as he had left it. It was dark, but there was a pole light not far away from the tree that gave it just enough light, and even more of the shadows. The droplets hitting the tin roof sounded more like a hammer at times. Ink was a little tense, head on a swivel, not sure what he was hoping for and questioning his sanity. It was about 30 minutes later that he was spoken to. "Are you a believer?" That whisper, but closer this time, in the room with him. Again, "Are you a believer?" He was a believer in God, for sure, but the door slammed, a piece of wood splintered off and landed at his feet, then a shout, "Are you a believer?" "Yes," Ink spoke. Not a whisper and not a shout, just a yes. The window behind him blew open, a gust of wind that set the door swinging hard outward, almost causing the weathered frame to give up, but it held. When the gust was gone, the window shut, the door as well. On his lap lay a tattered, folded piece of paper. Once carefully unfolded, he realized he held a news article. In bold print, the headline read, "Family mourns loss of youngest 2 daughters." The Stenton family of 1018 Oaks Road, just outside of Adams Landing, has confirmed the death of their youngest 2 daughters, Sybil and Grace. The family has asked for prayers and privacy during this time of mourning. The family spokesperson also stated the family would be making arrangements, but that those would be closed to anyone that was not immediate family. It is unclear the cause of death at this time. Local authorities have been contacted. Their only response to any questions were, "No comment." A curious thing for the wind to carry to his lap, Ink thought, as he laid his head back. If you stay, you must help. Are you a believer? And then the news article. Were the 3 related, Ink thought? As soon as the thought entered his mind, the treehouse shook violently. At the same time, the voice shouted, "Yes!" And that feels like a perfect place to end episode 1. I hope you enjoyed listening and are intrigued. Thank you for the support, and have a great day.